Okay, let's dive into the story of one of ancient Judah's most powerful and, well, most tragic kings, Uzziah. His reign back in the 8th century BCE was this incredible mix of massive success and just a spectacular failure. So let's get right into it.
So our story kicks off not with some ancient scroll, but with this piece of stone found back in 1931. It's called the Uzziah tablet, and it has this really intense warning on it. I mean, it's basically an ancient do not disturb sign for a king who had been dead for centuries. Kind of makes you wonder what's going on, right?
And that's the real question, isn't it? An inscription this serious hints at someone so important that people were still talking about his bones hundreds of years later. So we're going to piece together all the clues to figure out the man behind this legend. All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the hard physical proof. Then we'll jump into the biblical story of his golden age. After that, we'll look at the huge mistake he made, see what happened because of it, and finally, we'll wrap up with his lasting legacy. First up, let's ground this whole thing in reality. Before we get to the epic stories, we've got to establish that King Uzziah was a real person. And lucky for us, the evidence is literally set in stone. What's so amazing is how all these different pieces just click together. We've got stuff like royal seals from his administration. We can still see the building projects he commissioned. And there's even geological data confirming a massive earthquake that the Bible mentions happening during his reign. It's where history and scripture just line up perfectly. Let's just zoom in on one of these for a second. This is a translation from an old seal impression. Finding an artifact that names an official as a servant of Uzziah, that's like finding a government paycheck from almost 3,000 years ago. It's solid, tangible proof of his entire administration, with his name right there.
And this is where it gets really cool, where science and ancient texts totally intersect. Geologists have confirmed a huge earthquake rocked the region right around 760 BCE. And wouldn't you know it, the prophets Amos and Zechariah both talk about a terrifying earthquake in the days of Uzziah. So boom, a scientifically proven event dropped right in the middle of his historical reign.
Okay, so we've established he was a real guy. Now let's turn to the story told in the biblical texts, which paints a picture of his kingdom as nothing short of a golden age. Just a real quick heads up before we go any further. As you're looking through the sources, you might notice two different names. He's called Uzziah in some books and Azariah in others. Don't worry, it's the exact same person. This kind of thing was actually pretty common in ancient texts. According to the record, Uzziah was only 16 years old when he became king of Judah. Can you even imagine being a teenager and suddenly having that kind of power and responsibility dropped on your shoulders? And get this, he held on to that power for an incredible 52 years. We're not just talking about a long reign, we're talking about a period of amazing stability and wealth. It's one of the longest reigns in Judah's entire history. And he really put that time to good use. The guy was a master builder and a brilliant military mind. He expanded Judah's territory, he defeated rival nations, he beefed up Jerusalem's defenses, and he built all this critical infrastructure way out in the desert, all while commanding a massive modern army that made Judah a real regional superpower.
But here's the thing, he wasn't just a warrior king. The Bible gives us this really great detail, saying he loved the soil. And what that means is he invested big time in agriculture. We're talking vineyards, farms, livestock, the stuff that became the economic backbone of his whole kingdom. And right here, this is where the story takes a sharp, dramatic turn. You know how it goes in these ancient stories. For every great rise, there's often a pretty tragic fall. And for Uzziah, that fall didn't come from some enemy army. It came from inside himself.
The key point, according to the text, is that the very strength that made him great also became his downfall. After decades of nothing but success, he grew proud. What the ancient Greeks would call hubris. He started to think the rules didn't apply to him anymore. So let's break down this pivotal scene. He marches straight into the Holy Temple in Jerusalem to do something only priests were allowed to do, burn incense. When 80 priests bravely stand up to him and tell him to stop, he doesn't listen. He absolutely loses it. He explodes in rage. And right in that moment of pure fury, the text says a horrifying disease erupts right on his forehead. That single act of arrogance had immediate, life-altering consequences. In an instant, the most powerful man in the kingdom became a total outcast. Now, to really get how serious this was, you have to understand what leprosy meant in this world. It wasn't just a medical condition. It was seen as a direct sign of God's punishment. It made a person unclean, which meant they were banned from the temple and basically cut off from society.
The end of his story is just profoundly sad. The great builder, the conquering hero, the king who ruled for more than half a century, was forced into exile in his own kingdom. He had to live out the rest of his life totally alone in a separate house while his son Jotham took over the throne. What a lonely end for a king who was once so mighty.
So, what do we do with a story like this? What are we supposed to make of this king? Well, his life left a huge mark on history, a legacy that's both heroic and a serious warning. His importance is really sealed by one of the most famous lines in the entire book of Isaiah. The prophet's world-changing vision of God on his throne is specifically dated to the year that King Uzziah died. The end of one powerful king's era marked the beginning of a whole new chapter of prophecy for his people.
So in the end, you've got this dual legacy, right? Two sides of the same coin. On one hand, he was an amazing builder, a leader who made his nation strong and rich. But on the other hand, his life is this timeless cautionary tale about what happens when a leader gets too proud and forgets there are limits to their power.
And that's really the question we're left with, isn't it? Uzziah's story might be ancient, but the themes are as relevant as ever. It makes us think about our own ideas of leadership and success, and about that really fine line between healthy confidence and the kind of pride that can lead to a total downfall. A lesson from the 8th century BCE that still hits hard today.